Neuro Creatives podcast with Josh Crawford.
I get to talk to a lot of customers and I ask them, what feature is meaningful to you? One of my favorites is a woman who's well into her career and said, for the first time in my career, I am seen as smart because there were typos in her emails before. It's like, wow, this is software that is an enabler. It creates inclusive environments. What we're trying to do is necessary for some, yet it's beneficial for all.
Welcome to the Neuro Creatives podcast with your neurodivergent host, Josh Crawford. This is a positive podcast where we believe in no judgment of self and of others. We remove the societal stigmas of can't and don't by focusing on strengths, mental wellness, and empowerment. Together, we are building a culture of safety and inclusion where no one has to mask. All right, welcome Hal Lanier to the Neuro Creatives podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, excited to have you. All right, I'm going to kind of quickly go through your bio. If I mess anything up, correct me. Having spent his career at IBM, a defense contractor, a startup, and now in the assistive technology space, Hal has experienced a variety of industries. Within these industries, he has worked in each phase of the customer business cycle, from selling a widget, working in production to build the widget, implementing the widget, and supporting the widget, all the widgets. Hal enjoys connecting people to people and people to ideas, love that, and agree. With a curious mind, he has a knack for threading together concepts from various places that speak to a person's unique situation in a coherent way. That is an awesome tongue twister where there's so much depth behind it. Can you break that down for me?
I'll do my best. Yeah, there's a lot of depth, and I tend to be a person of depth that's been reflected back to me. Well, let's start with the variety of industries. I've had the blessing and opportunity to work at a Fortune 50 and a startup, and everything in between. And in each of those businesses, there was a lot of widgets that were referenced in that intro. I had the opportunity to experience every single phase of the business cycle, like presenting the product to the customer, actually being on the production line. I was with the defense contractor at that point, creating something, supporting it when it didn't work the way it was supposed to, implementing it, and it's given me the ability to see scenarios and situations and customers through a variety of perspectives and lenses. That phrase at the end about connecting people to people, that's one of my passions. I love connecting. I've connected you in the past to someone that you needed to know.
A few people.
A few. That's right. I forgot. And also people to ideas. A friend I met with recently, and they reflected back to me. This was not in my bio, but in the next season of my life, I'd like to shift into executive coaching. And immediate reaction was that I've got the unique ability to thread together disconnected ideas in a coherent way that speaks to that person's unique situation. I was like, can you repeat that, please? Because I want to write that down. So that's what all made it into my bio.
It's fantastic. You should have it on a T-shirt.
It'd be a big T-shirt.
Yeah, you could paraphrase a little bit, but that would be a phenomenal slogan for your executive coaching, which I think you would be great at. The funny thing is, I would say that you do that now, just not under that title. All of our conversations, I walk away from so much smarter, so much more grounded, so much more centered. We free flow, and I love that.
We do.
Yeah. And I love that you know that I'm walking around pacing. If I'm thinking, you're like, I'll take the notes. I got you. Don't worry about it. You just pace and think.
Yeah, you're a great brainstorming partner. It's like wind you up, let you go, and then I'll take the notes and capture and repeat back to you what you came up with.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for when you do your executive coaching. So.
Thanks. Maybe we'll hit some coaching topics today.
Absolutely. So the career journey, IBM, defense contractor, and so on, you've changed careers, industries, businesses quite a bit. And early on, I'm guessing the reasons for that are probably a little bit more different from the job that you're currently doing. And I want to get more in, and you can do this in any structure way that you want. I'd love to get into more of what you're doing now. And there's always a connected thread. We never leave experiences or knowledge behind. It all comes with us. It just might not be in our current title or current job. So how did you kind of weave your way through your career to end up to where you are now? And then tell us about where you are now.
I'm working for a company called Texthelp, and we make assistive technology for the workplace. So the company actually got started in the mid 1990s and creates assistive technology for the school systems. Purpose-built products specifically for students with dyslexia that struggled with comprehending digital text. And there's features in the toolbar that will be like text to speech. So think making an email or a document audiobook and reading it to you. So it's going through the audio cortex instead of the visual cortex. And I think there's like 20 different features built into the toolbar. I'm part of a team that is making that technology available in the workplace. With one little asterisk, we're actually undergoing a name change right now. So Texthelp will be changing names. I don't know what the name is, but by the time maybe this airs, we'll be under a new name at the time. But
will people still be able to find it under Texthelp?
I would think so. Yes.
Okay.
And the idea of Texthelp is we help people with text.
Yeah. So I'm a corporate learning leader, and we have different enabling tools, but Texthelp it's more like you've shown it to me. And this is not an advertisement in any way, shape, or form. This is two friends catching up and sharing a tool that I think, as a dyslexic person, as an ADHD person, as a dyscalculia person, like Texthelp is that bundle that has your Batman's tool belt. If that's okay.
It is.
Because it's not just a one size fits all. It's not just, you mentioned probably the most common thing of, people might say, well, Microsoft has stuff like that, but yours can interact with any. So if it's like an Apple computer or a Microsoft computer, right?
That's right.
It's seamless, it flows, but it's also not just, it was originally built for people with dyslexia or learning disabilities in school systems all the way through colleges. So It's not just at that elementary school reading level. So I want people to know that it was designed for the collegiate level learners as well. And different parts of those toolbars, like some of it, like whether it's dyslexia or ADHD or whatever, when I'm reading and I have a lot of words together, they all start to blend together on the page. But one of the features is it just kind of shadows out the top and bottom of the part of the page. So I'm only looking at that paragraph or those 2 or 3 sentences where I'm reading, so that all of the rest of the sentences and words don't blur into my peripheral vision to kind of mess things up. And in conversations that we've had, you have told me that even if someone is neurotypical, like people that are doing code find it extremely valuable as well. So it's not just for your neurodivergent people, and organizations are getting this for their entire population. One, so that no one has to disclose and self-identify. And two, out of those 20 something tools, there's something for everybody. And it's like,
there is,
yeah. So I'll stop, you take over.
Yeah, no, I want you to keep going, because you said it better than I said it. The tool you're referring to is the screen masking tool or a focusing tool. And so it will mask off the part of the page that it's kind of like extraneous, if you will, and allows you to focus kind of in the grid area that you want to focus. Super helpful for Microsoft Excel. Lots of rows, lots of columns. Great tool in the afternoon when cognitive load is high. And it's like, there was recently it was a press release I read, and it was on a page that was really wide and really long and a lot of text. And I was like, I'm getting lost in here. Let me turn on the focusing tool and just work my way through it. Almost similar to if you held a ruler underneath a book as you're reading, or a note card. It allows you to do that in a digital way.
Yeah, click of a button.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is, as I get to talk to a lot of customers, and I ask them, what feature is meaningful to you, and I start to collect that list. I hear cognitive load a lot, maybe later in the week or later in the afternoon when the cognitive load is high, and I need a reprieve. I need think you referred to as an enablement tool or support tool, which you're probably very familiar, but the spiky profile of someone with a neurodivergent condition, like off the chart, excellent at some things and not even registering on the chart on some other things. And the tool's designed to level the playing field.
Yeah, how awesome is that? Cognitive load. Can you break that down for people that might not know what that is?
Yeah, it's kind of a fancy big word, isn't it? The pet peeve of mine is using insider language. So I'm glad you asked us to revisit that. My definition, I don't know if this is the proper definition, but it's like when our brains get tired. I'd probably phrase it this way. It's the opposite of being in the flow. In the flow feels effortless. And when cognitive load is high, it's when it's whatever the opposite of effortless is. It's like I read this sentence and I need to read it 3 more times because I'm not sure I processed it.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, or metaphor, whatever it is. We're not about being exact and precise. We're about getting the point across. So awesome. I love that. So we started off, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get ourselves off a track here. I think I took my medication today. How you got into working for Texthelp and kind of your career journey.
Yeah, when you look at my whole career arc, it may seem a little bit haphazard, but it was actually purposeful. Each step was the right decision at that right time. It was more of a pull instead of a push. And one of the things that you know about me, Josh, I think in analogies, I explain things in analogies. And I just heard this referenced this week, so I'm actually getting able to put it in practice. But it's think of your life kind of like fast forward to like your 80th birthday. And you're entering a museum and you get to see a portrait for each phase of your life. Like think 0 to 10, what portrait would be there, and 10 to 20. And maybe it's 5-year increments or 10-year increments, but like, what does that portrait look like? And just kind of camp out there. Those different jobs, those different roles were unique seasons of my life. And we're saying that I worked at IBM. Well, I worked at IBM almost 10 years. And like we're taking 10 years and summarizing it into 4 words. There's a lot of lived experience in there. I was recruited into the role I'm in now from someone, ironically, I worked with at IBM over 20 years ago. And I was in almost like a parallel industry. I was working for an early stage company that is a training and development platform, which is near and dear to your world. And we were deploying content to Fortune 500s on the topic of inclusion. And I love the luminaries that created the training content themselves. They explain diversity as a noun and inclusion as a verb. And I think it's Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights, where he talks about we need to live life full of verbs. Like we just need to verb more, love more, live more, experience more, like whatever that, some meaty, hearty verbs. And so the inclusion is how do we be with one another? How do we interact better? And then when I started learning about Texthelp and what Texthelp does, I was like, wow, this is software that is an enabler. It creates inclusive environments. You had touched on this earlier in our conversation, self-disclosure. It takes a lot of courage for someone to raise their hand and say, I struggle reading and I need a support tool. And in a large corporation, there's statistics 75 to 80% will not disclose and say, I need help. And so we try to take a different angle and say,
can I yes and that real quick? Because that's 75 to 80% of the people who have already disclosed. But then there's also those other people that have not disclosed that would not partake in that. So just to add on there.
So to yes and what you just said is we're trying to take a different model and mindset and say, let's make it available for everyone. One of the benefits I have at working for our company, we have access to a mental health app. It's available. I just have sign in. I use it. There's a shutdown sequence at the end of the day that I play with my kids. It's a way for us to kind of reduce that cognitive load and shift from a very active mind into a peaceful, ready for sleep. We can do the same with this assistive technology, and we are doing it. Like organizations are deploying it corporate wide. And one of our mutual friends, they've deployed it, and they said, this is necessary for some, yet it's beneficial for all. So to your point, out of the 20 features, there's something there for everyone that enhances their productivity, helps them focus better, levels up playing field like we talked about earlier.
You've got so many good one-liners. Necessary for some, beneficial for all. It's funny because usually I'll say, oh, that'd be good on a t-shirt. So maybe a little bit long for a t-shirt. Anyway,
here's a suggestion for you. What if for all the podcasts, what if you find a one-liner and you get a t-shirt collection out of the Neuro Creatives podcast?
Oh, that would be fun. And then, well, of course, you'd have the one-liner and then your quote. So, necessary for some, beneficial to all, and then Hal Lanier. It's like, yeah, that'd be fun. I love it.
You have a way for ideas sparking. It's just, I think
I can't turn it off.
Nor should you. So that the spiky profileness, like, let you like live out loud, and how great that you're living in a learning role that is sparking creative thinking inside the organization. Like,
yes, in some points, in a conference room where you're more supposed to be listening, it's really hard to bite your tongue sometimes. And depending on who's leading the meeting and why one is invited to the meeting, sometimes it's appreciated, and sometimes the person next to you quickly bumps you as soon as they hear you go, like you're breathing in to about to, open mouth, insert foot. So sorry, keep going.
Yeah.
And this funny, anybody that's listening, this is how our phone calls usually go, to be like, okay, what topic were we on again? And circling back. And your career journey, you moving over to Texthelp and being recruited by someone that you worked with 20 years ago.
That's right. Each of the jobs I took, there was a deep knowing. It may not have made logical sense. And I think you've got something about the three brains that might be a time to unpack that. But in the depth of me, I knew each of the jobs I took, I needed to take that job. And this job is the same. I had a knowing. There's a quote. I'm going to have to, it's John Maxwell, who has written, leadership guru, has written, I don't know, it's over 25, maybe close to 50 books, like probably one of the most cited leadership. And he said that he never had clarity. He just kept taking the right next step. I'll have to find the quote and send it to you after this.
Yeah, I'm writing as much of it down. Never had clarity, just kept taking the next step. Yeah. So there's several different ways to say this or tie it back. And I've been on other people's podcasts where it's like, our ground rules here: no judgment of self or of others. Yes, and instead of no, but, and embrace rough and ugly to start. So it's never clarity, just kept moving forward is kind of rolls all those together.
It does.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I love that. Okay, so you had I'm sorry, did you say more of a calling or more of a?
It was a knowing.
A knowing. Yeah. A knowing. Okay, so the three brains, and I can't remember where this researcher, but it stuck. It was something that I was like, ooh, that makes sense, and I really like it. So we all have three brains: one in our head, one in our heart, and one in our gut. And what I recall was where it said one of these brains is smarter than the other two. Can you guess which one it is? So that's a question to you. Can you guess which brain is head, heart, gut? Which?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the gut.
Okay.
As I hear you saying it, I would imagine each of those brains has got a distinct personality to them as well. Like that brain feels very analytical to me. The heart feels very powerful, and the gut one feels maybe instinctual.
Yeah. You're good. So what I remember is the head, yes, logical, but it also, you're correct as far as the gut being the smartest. So the head has bias and cultural influences that can cloud its knowledge, right? The heart has emotions which can do the same. So when we get emotional, we're not as smart. And back if you ever read like The Art of War or something, you try to mentally or emotionally disrupt your opponent to have that advantage. The gut doesn't have either of those. So the gut is kind of the purest, I guess. And it's interesting because we have all the sayings, trust your gut or listen to your gut. But it's also something that, because it's not as strong. So say if all three of them have a thought, the head has an audience of all the knowledge that you've taken in or what societal norms add to it as kind of like a amplifier. The heart has emotions that amplifies it. The gut doesn't really have an amplifier. So it's really easy to silence it and not pay attention to it when we really, really need to pay attention to it the most, and then try to think about it from an unbiased part. And if our heart comes into that as well, but utilize it as a strength and not something that we kind of quiet.
To yes and what you're saying, the gut is actually the first organ that forms when we're being formed as a baby. The umbilical cord, we connect in, and it's literally the first thing that's created.
Okay. Goosebumps if you can see on camera, the kind of the chicken skin there. Yes. Yeah, keep going. I'm sorry. It's yeah.
That was it was more like, let me just drop that in there. Like, I don't know that I have anything to expand on it, but it's worthy of searching further. You touched on this. It's part of our vernacular. It was a gut instinct, what your gut telling you, or when you need to be brave. It's like, do they have the guts, intestinal fortitude. So I think there's something that's maybe the soul center, the deep knowing. By the way, I had to look up the quote from John Maxwell because it was bugging me, but I had it written down. Of course, I have it written down, right? I never had a clear vision. I just kept moving forward.
Yeah.
This is a man who's influenced, from a leadership standpoint, countless of leaders, immeasurable leaders. Yeah. And I never had a clear vision. I kept moving forward.
Yeah. Even for this podcast, I took a little longer than I wanted to kind of kick it off, but I also knew I just needed to go and do it. I needed to follow my own ground rules. And I knew that I had a group of people like yourself that would help support this. And your brilliance is better than my brilliance. So I just need to bring you on and have you share your brilliance with everybody else. And we'll just keep moving forward.
Or to yes, and we take two people that are brilliant and put them together, and it creates a synergistic brilliance. And it sounds like that's what you're doing through this podcast, is getting people together that creates something. Where 1 and 1 don't make 2, it makes 3 or 4 or 10.
Yeah. Who do I have conversations with where it's like, oh man, I wish there were other people that I could hear parts of these conversations. And the way that we're talking and going off script and coming back to it, and just kind of that free flowing, so that other people are like, I do that too. And maybe it drives my boss crazy, my partner crazy. Maybe it drives, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't use the word crazy. Maybe it bugs them, and they're like, yeah, this isn't just me, right? So I also want to help give a voice to other people that might experience the world the same way.
To your point, I think there's I love the ground rules that you've got, and it's there's a way to get into, like, where does the energy flowing in the conversation or in the room, and then that could also get into time blindness, where 3 hours later it's somewhere. And so there's the need to kind of zoom in and then zoom out. Like, where's the lighthouse? Oh wait, I'm still headed in the right direction. And then get into flow and then come back out. Oh wait, the lighthouse is now moved. I need to adjust course. So yes and is one of your ground rules. It's putting it in practice, literally. Like, go where the energy's at, but then raise your head up and then see if we're still on target.
Yeah, we're doing the breaststroke. We're going under the water, over the water, under the water, over the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Texthelp. And you getting there and you knowing that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. My youngest daughter is she was 7, 8 at the time, learning to read, and then was flipping some letters. And as the more I started learning about what the company does, like, wow, I could actually go work somewhere where there's purpose and profit, where those two overlap. I mean, how cool that I can go do that, that pours into my family,
Mm,
that provides support. And as much as I thought I would be able to contribute coming into the role, that I've learned so much about neurodiversity that I'm able to pour into my family and community, that I'm getting more in return. It's a whole new world's opened up to me, and I think that's happening at scale. That it feels like a neurodiversity wave is the next big wave that's coming. That awareness, it feels like it's happening in real time. That more and more people are becoming aware
yeah.
of it's hidden in plain sight. And I've got a whole, I think I've shared with you my analogy about the Avengers and how it's
You've shared it with me, but I think everybody else would benefit from hearing it as well.
yeah. So you actually sparked the idea is when I was we met, I guess probably a year ago now. And
Mm,
it I was trying to get my mind wrapped around, all right, what is neurodiversity, how do I explain it? And then it kind of occurred that each character of the Avengers displays neurodivergent conditions. Like, let's start with Tony Stark, like team comedian, right? The very brilliant, spiky profile, um, in long periods of hyper focus, will work all night long working on a project, and then come up with something amazingly brilliant.
hmm
Let's see, who's in Thor. Um, Difficulty transitioning from one social construct to another social construct. Captain America, very rigid ideas towards justice. Incredible Hulk, emotional overstimulation.
Yeah.
um, I mean, the list goes on and on. Spider-Man literally wearing a mask, like the concept of masking in the workplace.
Yeah.
Like, so anyway, it, it, it occurred to me is like, wow, we've got, at the time, I don't know where it's at now on the list, but it's one of the highest grossing movies of all time. One of the Avengers movies, and then neurodiversity is hidden in plain sight with every single hero that
Yeah.
makes up and they're actually the epitome of a spiky profile. They're excellent at probably a singular thing or a few things. They're a well-rounded team,
Yeah.
but as individuals, they're not well-rounded. Which, when I was coming up, it's be well-rounded,
hmm
and or for those are fans of the Strengths Finder, Marcus Buckingham and what he created. It's like that brilliance that you had in that meeting. Like, how can you leverage that within the confines of what that team meeting needs to be?
Yeah. When you're describing the Avengers, and I picture them in New York with the wormhole open and
Yes.
the aliens flying down, and Captain America says, Hawkeye, up on that building, whoever, go do this. Hulk, smash. You
Right.
know, it's like these are your strengths. Play to your strengths. Know what your strengths are. And so often we will stifle our strengths because it does show that side of us that's, you know, it's how are you that creative? How can you connect these things? How can you do this out of the normal strength without, you know, so I used to get that question a ton. And when I was still masking and hiding the fact that I was neurodivergent, I didn't like getting the question because then I'd have to lie. I just, oh, I'm just creative. And it's like, I know the answer. It's because I've lived a life of being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. So I've had to develop and grow my creativity in order to find ways to survive and thrive and hide,
Hmm.
um, you know, my challenges at the same time.
Here's a question that comes up for me before you shared um, about your neurodivergence. Do you feel like you're more creative now?
Oh yeah.
or more creative then?
Oh no. Yeah. So I love that question because when you were talking earlier, one of the things that floated through my head was I didn't research neurodiversity until I finally started to disclose that I was neurodivergent. So it wasn't just that I hid it, I also hid from it
Mm.
because I didn't want it to be a part of my life because it was a very dark cloud growing up. Um, and there was nothing positive that I knew that came out of it. But once it was going back to SCAD, or it's going to get my master's degree at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, where I finally realized that I do have these strengths and they're good strengths and they're useful strengths. I was corporate 500 companies my whole career, and my undergrad's in international business.
Mm.
So I didn't really have a lot of opportunity to utilize them that I knew of, but I was always an intrapreneur. So I was always creating my own jobs, my own positions, or project teams. I was the one that was always, oh, let's pilot something. And they're like, another pilot? I'm like, yeah, but they turn out to be successful, or they turn out to have good learnings. So there's good value.
Mhm.
Um, and at SCAD, it was the very first time that I got A's, and I got straight A's, and I had zero design background,
Wow.
whether practice or knowledge. And my brain felt justified for the very first time. And I was in my mid 30s. Um, and I was successful. I was running a $2 billion portfolio at GE Capital, but I couldn't get into an MBA school because I couldn't pass the GMAT
Yeah.
because my brain doesn't work that way. And then at SCAD, I didn't ask for a scholarship yet, and they gave me one because they're like, wait, you're a business person, your brain thinks this way, we're going to give you a scholarship.
Wow. So here's a thought that comes up for me. Going back to the three brains.
Yeah.
I wonder when you were doing these creative projects with no design background, if your gut brain knew what to do, and
Mm,
it got in alignment with your heart brain,
yeah.
and your head brain had to follow.
My head brain had to figure out a way to justify it at work, which it did, and it honestly led to some really cool projects and new positions.
Hmm.
I've created like 3 or 4 different positions for myself, and people are like, "How do you do that?"
Yeah.
And it is because it's like my gut tells me we're missing something, and my head can go into the logistics and the analytics to say, yes, this is something, and I can do the research on it. And yeah, that flow in my heart, I'm like, oh my God, I love doing this. I
Mm.
do these projects after work on the weekends because I love doing it. And, but it is something that ties back to work, which has helped me tremendously grow my career. Neurodivergent people are always doing things above and beyond and
Mm.
outside of the box. Now, as long you still have to do your regular work first, because I've worked with some people that only want to do the fun, creative projects and ignore their regular work. So you have to do your regular work first and do it
Yeah.
well, and then you do the other fun projects on top of it. And that's how I've been able to move up in corporate America.
Can you imagine the Tony Stark reference if in the movie they said, "Hey Tony, it's 5 p.m. At 6 p.m. you need to knock off for the day."
Yeah.
Like what kind of movie would that be?
They wouldn't make one.
They would.
Yeah.
I know you're in a state of flow. I know you're creating some groundbreaking technology, but it's time to go home. Like exit the cubicle and
Right.
head home for the day.
Right. Or even where he paints it, the um, suit, fire engine red, you know, corporate
Mm.
be like, no, that's too flashy. No, that's too, he's got Metallica blasting in the background, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so many things there.
So many things. Yes.
So what are some of your experiences or the stories that you've heard that were just heartwarming or ahas? Because the mission, and I'm going to say it's a mission, it's not a job, the mission that you're on, you can correct me, but the mission that you're on, like you said, it's, yes, there's profit, but there's also purpose.
Yeah. I get to interact with customers either directly or indirectly and hear some of the quotes, like how they're using the product. And one of my favorites is a woman who's well into her career and said, "For the first time in my career, I am seen as smart,"
Mm,
because the there were typos in her emails before. And I'm like,
yeah.
wow, the stigma you talked about earlier, we do have stigmas if letters are missing or the phraseology is not right. Especially in this era, we're quick to rush and judge. And social media has given us an outlet to judge publicly. You
Yeah.
know, um, I say that laughing, but I don't think that's healthy. And so, because of her being able to have this support tool is not even the right word, like a companion tool, if you will, that the perception of her has changed inside of her organization in the capability that's been able to be unleashed.
Yeah.
That's one that comes to mind.
And that's one story of one person that you've heard from.
That's right.
Now, if an organization gets the Texthelp or another accessibility tool for their company, they might not know. They're probably going to be looking at it from a profit and loss. What's the return on
Mm-hmm.
investment? And I was just talking with Judy Riley, who's the head of UConn Center for Neurodiversity, and it also helps create that corporate culture, right? Turnover is it is the most expensive thing in having to replace an employee because they don't feel like they fit in or they don't have those accessibility tools. So if I have to continuously read a ton of documents, or if I have to do coding or something that doesn't work with my brain, instead of allowing me to do more of what I'm really good at and focus on my strengths, like you said with strength finders, you know, how do you get past the ROI when companies don't understand it?
Yeah, it's a headwind for sure. One of the things that I've recently just come across, it's a study that the Job Accommodations Network created, and they looked at accommodations across the board, across all disabilities. It may be something that's like having a ramp into the building, um,
Mm-hmm.
which that just sparked another thought. We actually use a lot of tools today that were originally accommodations, like a curb cut when you're walking the sidewalk and to
Mm-hmm.
get up the other sidewalk, necessary for some, beneficial for all. The electric toothbrush was originally an accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
The typewriter was originally an accommodation. To your point, there are some that want to know the what is the return on investment. Lately, the study I alluded to earlier, it talks about HROs are trying to solve two major things right now: employee engagement and retention. And having the accommodation that's needed in the workforce does that. It's like absenteeism goes down, engagement goes up, productivity goes up, all the things. I'd love to have some finer data on that because
Mm-hmm.
I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you and I can hatch that idea. It's like, what would that study look like to introduce for making something that's necessary for some, beneficial for all?
I think like with anything that you're trying to measure, you got to draw a line in the sand before you
Mhm.
start and have an idea of, okay, what is the amount of sick days, amount of productivity, amount of, if there's a way to measure, like we do Great Places at Work,
Mhm.
is there a way to measure happiness, a way to measure retention? And it could even be, depending if people do quarterly or annual reviews on how to kind of measure that. I would love to do it across the company, like you said, but there's also in talking with Judy and Wells Fargo, they launched a huge neurodiversity program, and they started off with their technology function, and now I think they've opened up like 5 to 8 other functions that are now doing it, and they've hired over 300 neurodivergent employees because they were able to prove this ROI. So you could also have a smaller population of people, your control population and your test population as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I was looking
and
up something. If you saw my eyes go down, I was looking up something that in my last role when I was focused on inclusion training, there's an organization called CoQual, and they study belonging. And we just inherently know if I feel like I belong at my organization, we could infer I'm going to be more engaged. psychological safety increases, and then higher performing teams. Like we're all trying to solve how do you make a high performing team. They boiled it down to these four things: when we're seen at work, when we are connected at work, when we're supported at work, and when we're proud of the work. Those are meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still humans, right? We're not AI. You know, we might not think about, I guess this kind of goes back to the head, heart, and gut. You've got to have them all. The more engaged all of those are, if you have diversity of thought between each of them, I guess, within yourself, then you're going to be that much better. You're going to be, that much healthier, that much with a mind, body, spirit.
Yes.
It's if you can do that at work versus you're just punching a clock. You might be a salaried employee, but if you can get away with working 40 or 45 hours a week, you're going to do it, and you're going to not think during your commute home, or you're going to not think during, weekend or showers or wherever your mind can wander. Versus if you love your job, then you're going to be thinking about it all the time, and your productivity and everything else. Now, even though you're not technically on the clock, the company is going to get 60 to 70 to 80 hours worth of thought benefit because you're excited about doing better and the work that you're doing, and you enjoy it. When your job becomes your hobby,
Yes.
that's awesome.
Or let's look at a retail example, and I'm sure we all can envision walking into an establishment where the employees didn't feel like they belonged there, and
Mm-hmm.
an establishment where employees did belong there.
Mm-hmm.
The culture can be felt.
Oh yeah.
There's a feeling inside of those four walls.
So when I was in college, I used to wait tables, and it was a very fancy restaurant right in downtown Honolulu. And so during the day, all the office workers would come in for lunch, and they'd bring their families back for special occasions at dinner times. When they were in there, sometimes as well, when they were in their business environment, they would treat you differently than when they were out on a date or celebrating something as well. And so to that analogy, not just the retail, but everybody that's ever eaten out at a restaurant and been waited on, think
Yes.
of your worst experience of the waiter that doesn't want to be there, or doesn't know their job, or hasn't cared to learn the menu, doesn't care if you have food allergies. We literally used to kneel by the table side to be at eye level with our guests, and we would call them guests.
Wow.
And it's a button-up shirt and it's a white apron tied around us. And anytime there was a guest walking to or from the door, all the waiters would step aside and thank you for coming, or thank you for joining. But because we did that and we had that environment, and that was one of the closest family work environments that I've ever been in because of that culture. And we'd hang out afterwards, and we'd hang out on the weekends, and we'd look out for each other, and we'd cover for each other. No questions asked,
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a culture.
Yeah.
It sparked a thought for me. I was going off the restaurant. My wife has a severe food allergy. And so early on, she would have to really advocate for herself along the topics of self-disclosure. Like she actually
Yeah.
printed up a card to give to the wait staff and say, can you take this to the chef? Like, so the chef understands the severity of the allergy. And recently I was at the Disability Inn trade show in Las Vegas. There was a restaurant there. This is the first time this has ever happened. The server said, "I'm ready to seat you. Are there any allergies we need to be aware of?" So they proceduralized this and took it all the way to the host stand, that they asked that question, and it rippled all the way through. Then the server came, "Are there any allergies we need to be aware of?" They practice proactive inclusion. Like
Yeah.
what at Texthelp we're trying to do is necessary for some, beneficial for all. I don't have a food allergy, but I felt honored and
Yeah.
respected because they asked that without me having to say, "Hey, I don't want to be the nuisance. Hey,
Yeah.
I know I'm going to make this difficult for the wait staff in the kitchen. Can you make my meal a little special?" They just baked it into their process.
And they normalized it by
They
doing so,
normalized it.
right? It wasn't like you just said, hey, I hate to be difficult, hey, I hate to be anything that is negative to being, no, hey, anybody got a food allergy? And just make it a normal thing so that no one has to feel differently disclosing whether they do or not.
Yeah. So one of the ways I've implemented that in my role at work, we a lot of times we'll do training webinars. There's 100, 150 people on the call. And I state, would love to hear your questions. If you don't feel comfortable public speaking, place it into the chat and we'll monitor the chat.
Yeah.
Just the safety that I feel that creates, and then the brilliance of the questions that do surface.
Can I yes and that?
Please.
I'll also, because I've disclosed and I'm comfortable doing it, and usually when I'm talking or even doing keynotes virtually, I will say, yeah, put your questions in the chat. Spelling does not count. I won't know if you spelt it right or not, but I'll phonetically, as long as it's phonetically spelt and I can understand what it is that you're asking, we're good. Yeah. Because I spell things wrong all the time. To add to that, there's a chief officer at work that he and I have talked about being dyslexic. And it's funny because I will see message that he puts out more publicly that are as accurate as my English will allow me to know it's accurate. But then he'll ping me and I'm like, reading through it and I'm like, okay, we're missing a word here that, so I'm puzzling together, but he's comfortable enough with me to not have to first draft, good enough. I'm sure those others, either he's not writing it or he wrote the rough draft and someone else, went through and did all the editing. Myself, if I'm sending something out, I draft number 4, draft number 5, and the extra amount of time that takes to do that, or to send it to someone else that I'm comfortable with that I know was probably an English major, and say, hey, do you mind proofreading this for me?
What I love about what you shared about the webinar, it's incredibly disarming what you're doing. You're just saying, hey, just type it somewhat so that I can comprehend it and we're good. Like, how disarming is that? You're normalizing it. I love that.
Well, it's the way my brain works, and it's what I wish others would do for me, right? It's kind of like this painting behind me that you've asked about before in the past. And I painted it. It's 5 different canvases. When I went to SCAD, like I said, I didn't have a design background and I was getting a master's degree in design thinking and innovation. And because I didn't have any art or design background, they told me the elective I needed to have was art history. And we were learning about cubism and all the different types of isms that there are in art. And I had to create an original piece of work and then write about it. And I wanted to do the Zen circle. And I figured a fish would be a fun way to do it. And if the fish comes out sloppy, it's going to look like it's underwater. So it can come out sloppy. If it doesn't, great. But yeah, I nailed 5 different canvases together and just kind of overlaid them. And there's even little shine on there.
Yeah.
If you can see, so that it looks like it is underwater. Here's the fun part with that. If I can hang it back up. That's the second one that I did. The one that I actually did for school, I had down here and I swapped it recently. So it's still similar canvases, but they're in different areas and, freehand the fish. So it looks a little bit different. But I had this hanging on the back wall for probably a year virtually. And then without telling anybody, I just switched it. And the fun part, within the first 5 minutes of just about every call that week, someone would be like, wait a second, I'm sorry. I'm so distracted I can't concentrate on what we're talking about. Did your fish change colors? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. It's a new painting. Yes. And they're like, something about it used to be orange. How does that happen? And I didn't consciously do that social experiment, but it was so fun when it happened.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah. But that represents my brain. And I love the assignment to say, come up with something original. And the other part about that, and I always know I'm doing something right and I'm pushing the boundaries enough when I have, and I'll call it a hater, because in that class, someone was like, no, that's not considered a painting, or that's not considered a piece of art because you can't frame it. And it started this whole debate. And I'm like,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, because it was like, it doesn't need to be framed. It's not supposed to be framed. That's the point. And it's funny because a frame is a box, and this person was so in the box. Here are the rules. Here are the. It's like, it abstract art, and the thing that I loved, because I didn't know how to politically correctly respond to that person in the moment, because the things that were flowing through my head I shouldn't say out loud. The other classmates came to my defense, and yeah, so
What
I intentionally hang it, because it's like, that's how my brain works.
to me, that speaks to cognitive diversity, and
Mm,
for her, she was exercising her strength. And as an organization, wouldn't you want someone like that running quality control? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, so we
yes,
take these
yes,
different thinkers, but then we remove them from an area where they excel into putting them in abstract. It's to fish out of water, to use the term. But our strengths have a way of exposing themselves.
yeah, yes. I also want, that's why I guess yes and is on there, because if the assignment was a painting that can be framed,
Right.
it was come up with an original work of art.
And what comes
And
up for me is, as
yeah,
an innovator, the assignment, how might we frame that? Like, I imagine if we
right,
got creative enough, we could find a way to put a frame around those 5 canvases.
yeah. And sorry, so this is visually being recorded, but
Yeah.
just if someone's listening to audio, it's 5 different size canvases that are overlaying each other in. So each canvas is overlaying part of a different canvas, so they're not exactly in a circular
It's like you
form.
took a stack of note cards, of 5 note cards, and you dropped them on the floor, and they
Yeah,
kind of spread. And
yeah.
there's a beautiful painting on them that makes a cohesive picture.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Um, so are there any other messages or experiences that you kind of want to share?
Oh, good question. Yeah, this comes up for me. It's maybe this is kind of a way to summarize a little bit what we're talking about. Our CEO at our company was giving a presentation recently on the topic of neurodiversity, and he goes, "Before I talk about neurodiversity, I want to talk about bees, like a beehive, honeybees." And he unpacks that some bees are genetically different than the other bees in the beehive, and they're designed to be long-range foragers that don't go where the rest of the honeybees operate,
Mm,
as a means of making the hive more efficient and increasing their survivability. Because if the area that they're foraging gets damaged or whatever, and they need another place, the long range scouts have already found it. And then he
yeah.
tied that into neurodiversity, talking about, like, let's leverage our strengths, but these bees are genetically different than the rest of the hive.
Okay, I love that on so many levels, because it could be talking about innovation, right? We always got to look to innovate in new ways. The other thing is, we are intentionally hiring, air quotes, if you would, neurodivergent individuals for the way that their brains work differently, and we're celebrating it and utilizing it as a strength. NASA, over 50% of NASA employees are neurodivergent.
Oh, wow.
If you got to put a person on the moon, something that's never been done before, and it never really fully been conceptualized, and some people thought it would be impossible, you put the people in charge who have already done the impossible in their lives, right? The CIA and the equivalent of the CIA in Europe intentionally hire dyslexic people as code breakers, because letters are symbols, And if we can figure out how to read, we are figuring out symbol patterns and we see it differently. So it's not just looking at the every bit and every byte, but it's also being able to look at the big picture as well. If NASA and the CIA aren't good enough examples of companies that are already starting to do that, I love that bee analogy. Why shouldn't other corporations do that as well?
Well said. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Hal, there's a closing tradition on this
Okay.
podcast where the previous guest has provided 2 words for the next guest to kind of mix or mash together in a sentence or a short paragraph and try to make creatively and in a fun way with no judgment and rough and ugly, try to make sense of them. So however you want to brainstorm it or throw it out there or however.
I got my pen. I'm going to write this down.
All right. Your 2 words are leftover and water.
Okay. And then what's my assignment?
Right now, on the spot, sorry, this is just creative and no judgment, and we can play off of it together. Figure out a way to use those 2 words together in a sentence or in a thought, and just
but this is where my mind goes immediately. My kids walked into the kitchen today and asked, "Hey, do we have any leftover water?"
Yeah. Yeah, so many questions. What's the first question that comes to your head when, what do you mean by leftover water?
Yeah. Well, when the term leftover, I was thinking about leftovers, like dinner the night before. Yes. It's in the fridge. Kind of warm up some leftovers.
That's where my brain went to. Yep.
Yeah. And then water, I was like, how am I going to connect leftover and water? I was like, oh, what if it was a funny leftover water? Like maybe it was the a glass of water that was left on the counter overnight and it's leftover water instead of fresh water out of the tap.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw on a different podcast that there's mineral salt and our bodies are depleted of, there's different types of sea salt where there's like 90 something different minerals in it. So you put a little, not even like a quarter of a teaspoon, or that might even be too much, an eighth of a teaspoon in water in the morning, and you start, because we're dehydrated when we wake up. So I've started to drink the mineral salt water in the morning, but if I get water out of the fridge that goes through it's cold water.
Yes.
And I kind of want room temperature water. So I'll put water at night, and then I'll put a little plastic wrap over it.
Yeah.
And then in the morning I have room temperature water that I just put the salt in. So I have leftover water.
You drink leftover water every day.
I do. I love
that.
Yeah.
And I too have tried that. I read recently someone actually died from drinking too much water because they didn't have, it was just pure water, not enough electrolytes, and they flushed the minerals out of their body.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, could go down a whole different rabbit hole, but one of my neighbors, they were purifying all their water and they were taking everything out of it that whoever puts minerals and everything else into the water to help us be healthy. And they were starting to get sick, and the doctor said, "Oh, you're missing this, this, and this," when they ran different blood tests or whatever. And they figured out that, oh, we need to stop over purifying our water, or they were boiling it or something.
Interesting.
Yeah. Congratulations, and very easily and well done on the leftover water. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can text me the other 2 words, because depending on when this plays and when the next person comes on, we'll keep that a secret.
All right.
Hal, I appreciate you so much in so many different ways. It's always fun talking with you. I love the rabbit holes and the tangents that we build on each other with. And I love what you're doing for different communities and the inclusiveness and the intentionality that you bring. Yeah. And what Texthelp, or whatever the company's new name is, what their mission is, and that it originally was for students of elementary through college to help with learning differences that you've now realized is also beneficial and needed in the corporate world, and you've found ways where you can do it for the entire company where no one has to disclose.
That's
So,
right. And we didn't touch on this, but the mission of the company is that everyone has the right to understand and be understood. And
yeah,
and
great
because
t-shirt.
my defense background, defense contractor background, I got exposed to the phonetic alphabet, which is hanging behind me. It got created so that we can understand and be understood. Like so that there's no miscommunication in what was being communicated.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you again, and until our next conversation or our next lunch, which we need to do soon.
We do. Yeah. This is all of our conversations are like this. There's like we could keep going, but there's a time constraint. And they just kind of we just kind of end.
Yeah, but we did get to everything that we wanted to get to as well.
We did.
Yeah, it was a fun journey. All right, Hal.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yes. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. You are honestly the reason that this podcast exists. If you'd like more information on today's guest, please see the show notes. Also, add a comment to let us know your thoughts. And please subscribe.